Okay, so today we'll do chapter 15, and then a little bit of chapter 16. We'll probably do more. I think we're going to do more chapter 16 than we'll do chapter 15, because chapter 15 is a total of 8 or 9 verses, and then chapter 16 is like 62 or 3 verses. So we'll have a very short parak followed by a very long parak. Starting in this chapter, we begin to have a whole lot of, not that we haven't had them already, but a whole lot of more metaphors. For whatever reason, Yechezkel, more than many other prophets, speaks in metaphor. And though we'll see in chapter 15, he actually gives an explanation for the metaphor. There's very clear demarcation lines for where the metaphor ends and where the explanation of the metaphor begins. A lot of the metaphors between chapters 16 through 24, which we will see, are very often the reality, or the what's supposed to come out of the metaphor is not spelled out. So we will do our best in the process to try to address some of it, but there will be a lot of aspects or details of the metaphor that we're going to have questions about exactly what he is referring to. So chapter 15 begins. The word of God came to me, saying, Ben Adam, ma ya'itz hagefen mikol eitz hazmora asher hayab atzei hayar. So what will be with the vine of a grape, right? So a grapevine from any other tree in the forest. One of the things that's going to be striking that a lot of the Mefarshim point out is that there's never a thought to use the grapevine to grow grapes, because in this metaphor, the grapevine is representative of the people in Yerushalayim, and the people in Yerushalayim do not produce any grapes. They are basically a barren grapevine, and a grapevine is not necessarily known to be one of the strongest trees. It's a vine, like any other vine. It kind of grows pretty low to the ground. You need to have stakes to kind of get it off the ground to some extent. It's not a particularly thick piece of wood. It's hard to use it for anything other than growing grapes. So if it's a grapevine that's not growing grapes, it's not going to have too many actual uses. And not only that, but we're going to light it on fire. Right? Can you use it for any type of work? Can you use it even as a peg to hang something on it? What happens if we singe it, if we burn it, and now what? If we char it, is it now going to be any useful to do anything with? If it was basically useless before I burned it, now that I burnt it, is it going to have any more use?
I was wondering about that. You usually think it would weaken it, but there might be some cases where a burning might actually strengthen the outer shell or something.
Interesting. So I don't think this is all meant to be rhetorical, and the answer is to all these, I think, in theory, no. The idea is that you guys are basically worthless because you haven't really been able to follow God's command. Also, it seems pretty clear that he's talking to, at this point, the people in Bavel about the people in Yerushalayim. Because he doesn't really address the people he's talking to, he's speaking more about this concept. So, I don't remember who I saw, but a couple of the Mefarshim in the beginning felt pretty strongly that this was him speaking to the people in Galut about the people in Yerushalayim. And again, the big chidush of Yechezkel in general is that the future of the Jewish people is not going to be coming from the remnant of the Jews who stand to last in Israel, but rather from the Babylonian Jews, the Jews who've been exiled already. Lachein כה אמר השם אלוקים כאשר עץ הגפן בעץ היער אשר נתתיו לאש לאכלה כן נתתי את יושבי ירושלים. Right? so I placed the dwellers of Jerusalem. Right? If he was talking to the dwellers of Jerusalem, he would have said to you, and the fact that he refers to them in that way, this is where the indication comes from that he's talking to the people in Babel. So, right here we have a very clear demarcation mark, right, from verses 1 to 5, or 2 to 5, you have the metaphor, and starting in verse 6, you have basically the explanation of, right, what's going on, right? Therefore, who is this Geffen referring to? It's referring to the Yoshvei Yerushalayim. The Tibes Panai Bahem, and this is also really interesting, right? Very often we pray for God to turn His face towards us, right? Yisa Hashem Panav Elech, right? Meaning, even in the brachot of Birkat Kohanim, we ask that God turns His face toward us. It's a way of connection, right? The whole of the Purim story, we talk about Hester Panim, right? That God's face was hidden from us. But the problem is that if you have God's face towards you and you misbehave, so it's kind of like, right, oh, we really want the teacher to give us attention, or the principal to give us, or our parents, but then if right in front of their face we don't actually behave while they're giving us that attention, that's going to backfire, because we're going to get punished for all the things that we're doing right in front of the teacher, the parent, the principal, whoever it is, as opposed to if they weren't quite looking. So the irony is that God's going to turn His face towards the Jewish people, and because of all of their wrongdoings, the result is Me'aesh yatzu va'esh tochlem v'yadatem ki ani Hashem bisumi es panai bahem, right? That a flame is going to engulf them, and they'll know that I am God, right, as I turn my face towards them. V'nasati es ha'aretz shmama ya'an ma'alu ma'al ne'um Hashem Elokim, and I will basically turn the land to desolation and destruction, again highlighting the fact there will be virtually no remnant of Jews in Israel. The reality is going to be that the onus of the continuity of the Jewish people is going to be upon you, Jews who are in Babel. So, mark my words, realize that that responsibility is coming towards you. Fine. That is metaphor 1, mashal 1, whole thing in a bow. Very nice. We're going to move on. The next chapter requires a little bit of introduction. The Gemara Megillah Daf Chav Hey Amid Aleph quotes Rabbi Elazar, who says that this parak should never be read as a Haftorah because it's awful. It's a little bit of an interesting. We're going to have a couple more of these, but the metaphor of harlotry, which we're going to encounter in this chapter. We also have the first of a couple historical reviews or historical sequences where Yechezkel is looking back at some time in the Jewish people's past and recasting it in a way to send a particular message, right? In the same way that Tanakh in general is not a history book, and very often we have to be sensitive to what gets in, what doesn't get in, what's included, what's not included. Whenever a prophet or someone goes out of his way to rehash, right, historical precedent, you have to be aware of exactly what the aim is and what he's trying to do. So we're going to go back to the very beginning of the Jewish people. The word of God came to me saying, Ben Adam, Hoda es Yerushalayim es to'avoseha. Right? Let Jerusalem know its abominations. Vamarta, and say to it, Ko amar Hashem Elokim liYerushalayim mechorosayich umelodatayich ve'eretz haknani avich ha'emori v'imech ha'chiti. Right? Your dwelling place, your birthplace was in the land of Canaan, right? Your father was an Amorite, your mother was a Hittite, right? You came from very humble beginnings. Molatayich biyom huledet otach lo kadas shadech v'mayim lo ruchatzt l'mish'i hu'amelach lo humlacht v'hachtel lo chutalt. So, when you were born, you were not cared for very well. On the day you were born, your umbilical cord, right, was not cut. You were not washed with water. The next one I don't really understand, and I love this guy. He has he quotes Rashi, and then in brackets he says, we are unsure what this process entails. But basically, you were not salted, So apparently the Rishonim say that salting a child helped to harden the skin of a new baby.
Sounds like a piece of meat.
Yeah, no idea what that is referring to. I'm going to leave it in the realm of the sciences of the times, and it's hard for us to even appreciate what he's talking about. V'hachtel lo chutal, and Rashi says hachtel is from language of to like wrap. So swaddle, you didn't even swaddle as a baby. So basically, you were born. The day you were born, you were basically neglected from day one. Lo chasa alayich ayin, and no one had pity on you. La'asos lach achas me'ila lechumla alayich vatushlechi el pinei hasadeh. You're basically an outcast into the field. Bigo al nafsheich biyom hugadas osach. Right. No one really even you were disgusted with your body even from the day that you were born. Ve'avor alayich ve'ereich misposeses bedamayich ve'omar lach bedamayich chayich ve'omar lach bedamayich chayich. Right, and I passed by you and I saw you were downtrodden with all of your blood, and I said to you, with your blood live, and I said to you, with your blood live, this is the line that we actually lift out of this pretty awful situation. We say the bris milah. So basically, God passes by the downtrodden with all the blood, and basically says, "With your blood you will live." Right, and so if you're catching on, right, it skips the avot, which my Rabbi Chaim Angel, when we learned this, he said makes a lot of sense in light of some of the other ideas we've mentioned in Sefer Yechezkel, that he doesn't talk about the idea of zechus avos, right? The idea of merit of forefathers doesn't really come because you get punished for what you do and you get rewarded for what you do. That's a big emphasis of Yechezkel. So it makes sense to not necessarily start with the avos. He has this brief introduction about being born of these foreign nations in the Canaanite situation, and then he very immediately seems to go into, right, the Mitzrayim history, right, that you were when you were born, you didn't get cared for, right, so as an infant nation, you basically were already in a very precarious state, and God passed by us, and he saw that all of the work was so difficult and hard, and he said, which we say, according to Chazal, refers to the Korban Pesach and the Bris Milah, which were the two things that in their zechus, so to speak, in their merit, we end up leaving Egypt, right? So this is a microcosm, a little bit of, right, the Egypt story, our beginnings as a nation.
I would say those were the groups we were to destroy when we came into the land, right? The Canaanites, the Hittites, they're like 7 nations that
right.
God said, get rid of them, basically. Right.
I'm not sure if he's referring to maybe Terach, right? That like if you go back far enough, he wasn't a Hittite it's not an exact fit, but the idea being, right, you didn't come from some royalty, you came from wherever you came from, and then he doesn't mention Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. He kind of jumps right from the humble beginnings to the Egyptian story, and right, the reason again maybe being because we're not going to mention, right, the Zechus Avos piece. Not sure. The very beginning of that, I'm still not 100% positive what to do with, but that's my best theory at this point. So, Pasuk Zayin, Rivava ketzemach hasadeh nesatich v'tirbi v'tigdeli v'tavoi v'adi v'adayim shadayim nachonu us'arech tzimeach v'at erom v'eryah. And basically, God, right, intervenes, and all of a sudden this disgusting little baby who's not cared for grows up into this beautiful maiden. Ve'evor alayich ve'ereich v'hinei iteich eis dodim ve'efros knafai alayich ve'echaser v'aseich ve'eshavalach v'avo bevris osach ne'um Hashem Elokim v'atehi li. and it's this love story that God covered over, right, the Jewish people, right, this in this parable, this beautiful woman, this beautiful young woman, basically gets a shidduch, right? This language of V'efros knafai alayich is the same language that Rus uses when she's trying to court Boaz to marry her, right? That you should spread yourself over me. That language is a language of marriage. So, and you made a covenant, right? So this is all referring to, right, the Har Sinai experience, right? So we went from being the slaves in Egypt, God hearing our call, taking us out and having us live through the blood, and then marrying us, so to speak, right? We come to a point where we were, right, this young, attractive nation. Everyone in the world recognized the Jewish people as they left Egypt, and God makes a covenant with us at Har Sinai. Ve'er chatzeich b'mayim ve'eshtof damayich, right? And so God basically cares for all the things that we were neglected as a young baby. He washes us with water, rinses off the blood, right? Asukech bashamen, he anoints us with oil. L'albishech rikma v'na'alech tachash ve'ech b'shesh ve'chasech mashi. He clothes us with all of these fine clothing. Ve'edeich edi ve'ednatz midima al yadayich revid al gronech. He gives us jewelry. These are probably referring to the combination of the Mishkan, maybe, or the mitzvot, or the various adornments that were given, the manna, right? We're given food, we're given shelter, we're given things, right, at Yam Suf, at other places. So that's all, I think, in this, right, this plenty that after we're married, so to speak, to God, He provides for us. So it gives us more jewelry, nose rings and earrings, and the crown of glory on your head. Right? So again, this could be referring to a lot of things. It could be referring to the Zer Zahav Saviv that's surrounding many of the Kalim of the Beit HaMikdash. It could be referring to the Keter Shel Torah. It could be referring to a whole slew of different crowns. But basically, we went from rags to riches, from slavery to freedom, from a nobody nation to the nation that everyone was talking about. V'tadi zahav v'chesed v'malushech shishem meshi v'rikma solas tvash v'ashem v'chalti v'tipi ma'od v'titzilchi b'locha. And right, you became befitting for the throne. You became befitting of Klal Yisrael. V'yetzelach shem b'goyim b'yofyech ki chalil hu v'hadari asher samti alayich Ne'um Hashem Elokim, right? And at this point, you became known, right? You were known amongst nations. Everybody was talking about the little slave nation, the Jewish people who took down the superpower Egypt and survived in fleeing, and how Egypt was left in the aftermath. So you became famous. V'tivtechi b'yofyech v'tizni al shemech Tishpechi al tiznu sayich al kol over lo yehi. But you relied upon your beauty and you went out astray because of your fame, and you poured out your harlotries on every passerby. To him it would be. And this is obviously referring to this week's parsha, to the Egel story, that right after, right, God provides for us and takes us out of Egypt and frees us and gives us all these beautiful things, we immediately, right, turn to idolatry. And this is where the Gemara Megillah is going to say really should stay away from this perek, because now it's going to get pretty graphic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go until Pasuk Lamed Dalet, I think. Yeah, and then we'll stop at Lamed Dalet. So this is a transition point. So up until now, right, the metaphor has been highlighting the build-up, right, your background, the lowly background, all the things that God did for us, and right, building us into this, right, now well cared for, beautiful, perfect maiden, and right, and now once we get to that point, right, we've reached this pinnacle, and all of a sudden, right, so we seem to rebel, and there's act again and act upon act, and again, one of the benefits of speaking from a later point in history is that you can basically ignore a lot of the nuance and just focus on many of the problems. So right now we kind of, I think, start off with the Egel, but we very, very quickly move into some of the alliances we'll see pretty briefly between the Jewish people and some of the foreign nations over the years of Sefer Melachim that we learned about. And right, the conversation that everybody has here is similar to the conversation we had in Melachim, which was when you create these treaties, they're problematic, for one of two reasons, or both. The first is that it shows a lack of faith in relying upon God. The problem with that approach, generally, is that we do have times when prophets encourage the Jews to fall in line and to basically not make a stink about it, right? Including, Mordechai working together within Persia, or the Babel story itself, where plenty of the prophets said, "Don't fight, don't fight, don't fight" to Tzidkiyahu, and Tzidkiyahu still rebels and does rebel against Babel, and that ends up being the kind of the final death knell in Jewish presence in Israel, eventually with Gedaliah, etc. But the reality is that there's this other, much more troubling and problematic aspect of alliances, especially with Assyria, that we saw earlier, that wasn't so present with Babel, which is that once you create a military pact, often the cultural pact came along with that, which meant that you had to worship the gods of that superpower that you were now taking under, or they were taking you under their wing. And for Assyria, in the case of Assyria in particular, we saw how pervasive, right, their idolatry came into the Jewish people when some of these alliances took place. And so even though that's awful when it comes to, right, the Assyrian alliance, it's not quite as clear that it was as problematic in some of the other later alliances that we've had. So that's a really interesting point to think about, which we noted when we learned Sefer Melachim, right, in terms of thinking about today, the modern state of Israel, and the way that the world works in terms of creating alliances with other superpowers, and how that influence affects the Jewish society they're in and whatnot. So a lot of interesting material, but we're going to see now, so Yechezkel is going to focus on these two prongs, idolatry as well as these foreign alliances, and whether or not they are two different ideas or really the same idea, I'll leave to you guys to figure out. So let's do it inside. So Pasuk Tet Zayin, Vatikchi migadayich vatasi lach bamot tlaot vatizni alehem lo baot v'lo yiyeh. Right. So you took the very garments that I gave you to cover you, to beautify you, to make you feel good about yourself after having grown up, being neglected, and you use those to make mounds that you basically played the harlot upon. And that's probably a reference to later points when Avodah Zarah was brought. So two things. It could be referring to the gold that they got from Egypt, that they turned that gold into the Egel HaZahav, or you can talk about similar ideas that happened later when the Jews turned the Beit HaMikdash basically into a Makom Avodah Zarah, right? That they turn the very places that God created for this closeness, or these avenues or things that God, you gave us to create this bond between the Jewish people and God, and we turn them into things that we serve idolatry with. Vatikchi klei tifartech mizavi mikaspi asher nasati lach v'tasi lach tzalmei zachar vatiz nibam. This is a pretty graphic situation. You took the gold and silver and you made some sort of male image and you fornicated with it. I'll leave that there. V'tichias bigdei rikmasech v'tichasim v'shamni v'katarti v'nasat lifnehem. And then you took all of the foods and all of the fine spices and oils and everything else and the ketoret, and you basically usurped those things from being a special bond between me and you, and you started using them for these idolatry. V'lachmia shenasati lach solos v'shaman dvash ha'chalisich v'nesatiu lifnehem l'reich nichoach v'yehi ne'um Hashem Elokim. And basically everything that I gave you, you basically you turned it on its head, right? And again, this could be referring to the problems with the manna in the desert. It could be referring to other things, where more heinous things, where they in fact use these things for idolatry later in history. It's not fully clear, and like I said, one of the challenging things about some of these prakim is that Yechezkel does not, at the end of this, go back and say, and this is what I meant, right? This is referring to this, and this is referring to that, and this is referring to this time or this place. He doesn't. He's speaking in metaphor. It seems to work, as we'll see over the next few prakim. More and more it seems like there are people listening to what he has to say and trying to decipher what it is his prophecies mean. But certainly the provocative imagery that he uses is getting people's attention. Vatikchi es banayech ve'es benosayech asher yeladet li v'tisbechi lahem le'echol hama'at mitaz nusayich. So not only do you go astray, but you take your children and you either lead them astray, or worse than that even, which is probably what is saying here is the situation with Molech, where they would actually send their kids into the fire as a sacrifice for this idolatry. So your harlotries are bad enough, and then it leads not only to that, but it leads to the destruction of the next generation, of using them for idolatrous purposes, and in fact killing them in the process. Vatishchatias banai vatitnim vehavir osam lahem. You slaughtered my children by giving them to them. Ve'ezkol tovasayich v'taznusayich lo zachart es yemein orayich be'yosech erom ve'erya misposeses be'damayich hayisi. Right. This is the notion that we see in Parshas Hazinu. Right. The what's the language? Vayishmerun, Vayishaman, Yeshurun, Vayivat. Right. So you got fat and then you kicked. Right. That you got all this stuff. Right. It was a story of rags to riches too quickly. You didn't know what to do with yourself, and you basically used this as an opportunity to kick the hand that gave you all of these things, and you forgot your humble beginnings. You forgot your nakedness. You forgot where you came from. You forgot your insecurities and everything else that God helped to solve for you as a nation. And after all of this, woe is to you, I am the Lord. A little bit further. So this all very much focuses on the notion of this harlotry, which generally speaking is a metaphor for avodah zarah, right? Of idolatrous practices. And now we're going to kind of jive that idea with the foreign alliances that comes right after. Vativnilach gab tasilach rama bechol rechov. And you built yourself these beautiful palaces and lofty squares. El kol rosh derech banit remasech v'tisa avi es yafyech v'tifaski es raglaich l'chol over v'tarbi es taznusayich. And you increased your abominations, and again you spread your legs to every passerby, etc., etc. V'tizni el b'nei Mitzrayim shcheinayich gidlei vasar v'tarbi es taznuseich l'hachiseni. Right, and you played the harlot with the children or the sons of Egypt, your neighbor, who the growers of flesh, and you again increased your harlotry in order to anger me. V'hinei natisi yadi alayich ve'egra chukeich ve'etnech benefesh sonayich benos plishtim hanichlamos midarkeich zima. And so basically, because of that, I delivered you to the will of those who hate you, the daughters of the Philistines, who are embarrassed by your lewd ways. Vatizni el b'nei Ashur, mibli savatech, vatiznim v'gam lo savat. Right, so you had some trouble with another close neighbor, so you played harlot to the Assyrians. You went to a bigger power for your help. Vaterbi taznuseich el eretz Canaan, kazdima v'gam bezos lo savat, and you were still not sated. Ma amula li baseich ne'um Hashem Elokim ba'asoseich es kol elam aseh isha zona shelatetet b'nosayich gabeich berosh kol derech v'ramaseich hasis v'chol rachov v'lo hayisi kazona lekales esnan. And right, you basically you went to every single place, right, and you build more eminent place, right, head of every road, and make a lofty place in every square, but you are not like a harlot to boast of a higher. Haisha mina efes tachas isha tikach es zarim. You took strangers. L'chol zanos yitnu nida va'at nesat es nidanayich l'chol avosayich vatish chodi osam lavo elayich misaviv v'taznusayich vahi bach hefech min anashim v'taznusayich v'acharayich lo zuna u'visiteich esnan ve'esnan lo nitan la v'atehi lahefech. And right, so and on top of all of that, not only do you end up basically opening your legs, so to speak, to every single person, but the general practice is that at least a harlot gets something in return, right? At least a harlot normally gets paid for her services, right? But you guys are so bad that, right, after I provide all these things for you, you become a harlot, but then you end up paying and giving gifts to the very people that you end up becoming the harlot for. So you don't even get paid for it. You end up paying, right, to be a harlot to these people. And it's basically the exact opposite of what it's I don't know, say it's worse. It's terrible either way, but it's just pathetic, right? That you don't even have the excuse, so to speak, right? The Les Mis type excuse, right? That I did this bad act because I was trying to provide. No, right? God had provided, right? God would have provided. Whether it was you needed security, you needed sustenance, whatever you needed, God could have provided. But instead, you decided to sell your soul, so to speak, and in return, you didn't even get anything, right? You basically just took their culture, accepted their culture. You had to, right, live by their rules. So you basically flipped the whole paradigm on its head. So this is a pretty scathing parak about the history of what's gone wrong. And again, this is Yechezkel's idea of trying to convey to the Jews who are in Galut that this was a long time coming, right? This destruction, it's not like, oh, we've been so good for so long and it's just been a little bit in the last little bit of time that we've been, right, problematic. Right? Yechezkel's goal here is to paint a picture of history that's pretty negative. And it's to take the story already from the very beginning of our existence with the Egel and use that and kind of trace that through all of the various missteps of, right, the whole book of Shmuel, the whole book of Melachim, all the Shoftim as well, all of those missteps, whether it's the idolatry that we did plenty of times in the book of Shoftim, whether it's the idolatry that we turned to plenty of times in the book of Melachim, all of these failures of leadership of the people are put together in Yechezkel's short historiography right here as a way of conveying to the Jews now who are in Bavel that don't think that God's just destroying this Beit HaMikdash because all of a sudden, right? You guys, this has been a long time coming. You deserve everything that you're getting. Everything that's coming is totally understandable and can be explained. But he doesn't really say any of that, right? This is all us trying to use his metaphor to try to understand exactly what he's trying to get at. He leaves it pretty much vague, but we'll continue next week with the second half of chapter Tet Zayin from Pasuk Lamed Hey until the end of the chapter.
He doesn't really say Mida Keneged Mida, right? He's not really...
No, not so much. Not so much. He doesn't really give you a very clear... Right, and there's also no path to teshuva at this point, which we've noted many times in Sefer Yechezkel. Very rarely does he encourage people to repent. This is more kind of saying why everything went wrong, so that you understand. I've already said many times the Beit HaMikdash is going to be destroyed, right? And you guys are convinced it's not going to happen, but there's a long-standing reason for why this is going to happen, and the people today as well really deserve it.
I can't help but think, the Purim story when Achashverosh has all the vessels from the Beit HaMikdash, he brings them out and displays them, and it's, I don't know, it's sad.
Yeah. Yeah. Okie dokie. We'll stop here.